Back in the garage again, trying to get the overview videos complete. Make sure kind of filled everyone in on the various things that I've done to not only get the swap complete of the 3UZ, but also the unique aspects of this swap versus maybe other swaps, and also just some tips and tricks that I fumbled through along the way that maybe I didn't hear other people say. Let's start off on the right side of this and kind of move around the entire engine bay and talk about everything that's done here. So on the right side, we've got the ECU box. So a few little details people don't talk about is that the 1UZ 3UZ ECU is pretty difficult to get snugged in there in the IS300 spot, but you can definitely get it in there. You can also trim the inside of this if you want to, or you can just shove the ECU in there nice and tight. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's what I did. All you have to do is swap these little mounts out on the side, and then it goes in basically to the stock location, no problem. Depending on whatever swap harness is done for you, you're gonna have different things that you're using and not using from here, but more than likely you're probably going to need an all-for swap box. Now I didn't do this wiring, so don't ask me questions about it. My wiring guy did it, who's a local guy and really isn't doing more wiring harnesses, so I can't mention him, but he did this swap for me, and I know that you need it for the majority of the times that you're swapping out a different sized engine into a car. So it helps everything talk to each other. As we start to kind of radiate away from that point here, you'll notice that I utilized a wiring loom kind of throughout the whole thing. Vibrant makes this wiring loom. It's very easy to kind of re-loom all of your wiring. I got rid of all of that nasty tape. I'm sure some of you saw some posts on Instagram about it, and I did re-loom the entire thing inside of this style of loom. I do want to redo the connection points here a little bit and make that better, but overall I am happy with utilizing a loom over trying to retape it all, knowing that the tape just kind of goes bad after a while anyway. So some other things you'll notice is that I did relocate some things. I do plan on repainting maybe in the future and doing something nicer with the engine bay, but right now it is what it is. But I did want to take some time to relocate the engine horn. The engine horn I relocated over to there to another spot. There were a few sensors or some plugs that I relocated around. Same thing over here. There were some sensors or some plugs, something like that, and I just put them in different spots that you can't really see, bolted them down so they're not moving around, but also cleaned up the area that they were in. It's just unfortunate for me that the engine bay wasn't in great shape and is a little scratched up, so doesn't look too finished, even though I kind of shaved those items. But we'll get to that in the future, as it's all a working in progress sort of thing. So the other thing you'll notice on to the right here is that our fuel line is an AN fitting. So if you watched the engine and transmission overview video that I put out a little while ago, then you'll notice that I had AN fitting on my fuel line. So this is where I ran the fuel line. I ran it behind the AC line coming from the inside. That just seemed like the better location. I also made sure to put some heat wrap on there. You'll notice that I used some various heat wrap. A lot of the heat wrap tends to stink. The adhesive just isn't good. You can get metal zip ties, and you'll notice in a lot of the places I utilize metal zip ties to help keep that heat wrap on, just because I really don't trust it. But these lines were done by Drift Motion. It's usually a combination of either Drift Motion or Treadstone. If I do them myself, then I get Treadstone products, and then if I have them made, Drift Motion makes them up for me, which is super nice, and sends them out really good price on making some lines and really nice fittings. This is the charcoal canister line. Again, reference that in the video that I did a little while ago about the engine and the transmission overview. I just wanted to do it. Why not? Makes sense to do it, even though I may not have to do emissions where I am. And then you'll notice the other one is capped off. That one's going. That one's capped off. If I got that wrong, feel free to let me know. I did as much research as I can. I'm pretty sure I'm running the correct one that I need to run to get to the canister. But fuel line adapted to AN line, and then now canister line running down to that. So what else do we have over here that we need to talk about? More things wrapped. These are the lines that are a part of the Finishing Lines ABS relocation kit. So you'll notice those beautiful lines running throughout, and the ABS block relocated over here into the corner, looking really nice. These lines are just super professional stuff. Absolutely love it. I saw in a lot of videos that people were using the Finishing Lines ABS kit, so I did so as well. I noticed that you don't have to relocate it, but if you remember in my engine and transmission overview video, I have a huge intake that I want to put over there, and even just this area that we're going to talk about in a second would be very, very cramped to have that ABS block still over there. So I'm glad I relocated it and did all of that, which kind of brings us to this area in general. Again, you can see one of these boxes. I'll be honest, I don't even know what it does. I feel bad saying that, but I relocated over here to the wall to get it out of the way. Who knows, I probably don't even need it for the swap. And then I also added my connectors for my positive and negative battery terminals, because I have my battery running to the trunk with the subwoofer. So I ended up just basically drilling holes to make the ABS block fit onto the battery tray, and then added these terminals that I bought off of Amazon. Works very well. All of my negative lines from the transmission, from the engine, and everything all go to this one negative block too, as if it's one of those charging blocks or that sort of thing. So I think that'll be a very nice setup, and at least make sure that I'm not leaving any power on the table that I should be having. Just a few things on the back to take note of is also the water heater lines. These guys right here, this is a combination of IS300 and SC430 heater lines that came with the engine, and that also came with the chassis. I did have to work pretty hard to get them on, and they're not absolutely perfect, but I think they're going to work just great for what I need. Hopefully they flow just fine. Intertwined right now, just being held up, is the GS400 throttle cable. So I went to a GS400 throttle cable. Needed to be a little bit, I think, shorter. I think it was shorter. Maybe it was longer. Yeah, maybe it was longer based on where the IS300 cable was. But either way, GS400 throttle cable works absolutely perfect if you're doing a 1UZ swap or a 3UZ swap with a 1UZ throttle body. So that'll work well with that as well. So let's see what else we've got here as we move outside of the car. To the left, I already kind of talked about it for a second, but I've got a Chase Bays reservoir, which is really nice. Converted all my lines to AN for the power steering, which honestly, we're going to have a whole separate video about the power steering. One, because it has to be relocated over. Two, because modifications to the tie rod, inner tie rods had to happen. Three, I have AN fittings on that, so that's just a whole another thing. But this Chase Bays was a nice little setup. If you didn't see on my Instagram, I made a little quick bracket over there to be able to hold the Chase Bays reservoir, as well as a cheapo eBay catch can. It's still a nice catch can. It's going to work fine for this system since it's an NA system. I used to have it on the MR2. I had two of those catch cans mounted, and it could not keep up with the blow-by that was happening. So that's when I had to upgrade to the Fat House can that I use on that now. If you weren't familiar with that, you could look up on Instagram, maybe like 20 or 30 posts back about the Fat House can that I ended up getting made for that. But anyway, so this is a good catch can for it, all AN lines, and that'll all attach to the vacuum system that I ended up making over there. So I think that kind of covers up around the outside of the setup here and everything that we have going on around here. Another thing, GS400 AC line. That was crucial find to be able to making it non-custom and making everything kind of OEM. You'll notice I kind of screwed it into some factory locations onto the wall. Worked out very, very well. Hooks up very nicely. No big deal there. So lastly, maybe some tips and tricks, and also just what I did. So, a lot of debate about massaging the inside of this, and by massaging I mean hammering vigorously and massaging there. And I didn't want to be a part of the debate, meaning I just did it. I did it whether I needed to or not, and I know that might be silly because I know that hitting things like that do weaken it structurally, but I just didn't see it enough as being a big problem. I had no issues being able to bang it in, so I went ahead and did it just to make sure that I don't have problems later on. But you'll notice I also went the spacer route. I made some real thick aluminum spacers. I did aluminum on purpose. It's got a little bit of give. I know not a ton, not like something super soft, but it is a soft metal. I was able to drill it out and put those in the location to kind of lift the engine up a little bit to technically not need the massaging as much, but to also help with the exhaust clearing over the steering shaft, which, again, whole video on the steering stuff and how that had to go down. We'll talk about that because it's still a work in progress technically, I'm not going to lie, but we've got a great solution going on the Facebook forums, and I'll talk about them in a minute, that's bringing us to a close on that and should be able to get that finished up, so that way by the time the engine gets in, we'll be able to make the video for those modifications and get to driving right away. Small little tip and trick, if you are going to do these spacers, is they move all over the place. When you're trying to get the engine in, they'll move all over the place, and as you can see right now, they are not moving all over the place. That's because I put some gasket maker, 1 minute gasket maker under there and created a nice little seal, you know, just to keep it in place so it didn't move when I was putting in the engine and made things much more simple. So, you know, maybe that's a tip and trick, maybe that's just me being silly, but either way, it definitely helped. Keeping it in place while putting the engine in helped quite a lot. Let's see if there's anything else I'm missing. Oh, a glaring obvious thing that I'm missing. A shiny glaring thing. I did replace the back firewall with some nice heat shielding. Heat shielding can be gotten, you know, on Amazon, on eBay, anywhere really. It's got a pressure-sensitive sticky backing to it and works extremely well inside of these areas and has held surprisingly well. I'm very happy with it. I'm surprised it didn't peel off, to be honest with you. But after I've pressed it on, it stayed on, and I think it looks really nice. It's definitely, you know, I got a little bronzy gold with bare aluminum thing going on, and it worked well with that color combination, but also I think it'll do the right thing, which is making sure to keep that heat out of the interior of the car as much as possible. So, well, I think that's pretty much it for the interior of the chassis and all the things that I needed to make it work. Well, as I back up, I see one last thing, which is the transmission cooler. Delrall transmission cooler. Really, really nice unit. Came with AN fittings and a temperature sensor on it. Obviously, I'll have AN lines going from it all the way over to the transmission, which will be down there once we get it mounted in. But as far as I can see, I think that's it. Right to left, top to bottom, we've covered everything that you kind of need to do to be able to get a 3UZ 1UZ inside of this chassis. You know, there's not too much to do to the chassis. I would say putting the engine in is actually the easy part. The wiring, which I didn't have to do, thankfully, is the harder part. And if you skip around some of the other stuff, like not relocating the ABS, you know, not doing custom end lines or you know, a special reservoir, but just going with a stock reservoir, not doing custom fuel lines and things like that, I think the swap is rather manageable and pretty darn quick, and makes it really worth it in comparison to some of the other swaps that you would do. Now, once you get a little bit deeper into it, like I have now at this point, I would say that it's, you know, just like any other swap in complexity, but at the same time, it's still rather easy and was cost effective. So I'm excited about the output of this versus the 2J that was in there. And I know you can turbo 2JZ, and that's great business for sure, but I'll have the power of a turbo 2J relatively right off the rip at low boosts, and won't have to worry about all of the things that come along with a boosted engine. And then if we do end up boosting this engine in the future, which there is possibility of that, or even going deeper into the NA realm with it, we'll get really great reliable horsepower and really great grunt, which will be perfect for a four-door daily driver. So yeah, again, as always, appreciate the support. Glad things are going so well. It's time to get this motor in and get to business. I'm looking forward to the next videos, starting video, driving videos, burnout videos, all that sort of stuff. But we still got a lot to go, as you all may know. Just the power steering alone is a big deal. And then we've got the exhaust that you can kind of see a hint of down there, which is a big deal. All of those things will still need to be finished up before it's, technically really driving on the road. But closer and closer.